Condors could remain airborne for hours on end. And now he himself was caught up in that same world of wonder, stirred by its challenges, excited by its promise, and willing to fly on like this forever. But easygoing Fred Harris said no. There always came that time when you must drop back to earth and reality.
I loved it.
Good enough.
I think I might even take lessons. It's okay with Fred.
Oh, swell. You bet.
It was on the boy's next flight that he cast his lot with the Condors, yielding himself completely to the lure and the thrill of soaring.
How would you like to try your hand at flying this?
Yeah, I sure would.
Okay, just take hold of the stick lightly with your right hand, feet on the rudder pedals. Now to make the sailplane go in the direction that we want it to go, always apply pressure on the controls in the direction we want the sailplane to go.
This was the moment when Chris felt no longer earthbound. The wings of the plane seemed actually his own. Here was true adventure and challenge. And so began a logbook labeled Christopher Jury, a record of flying time, lessons learned, tests taken and passed. And then the big day every pilot hopes for, the first solo flight.
Well, would you like to try it yourself?
Yeah, I sure would.
Yeah, you ready, huh?
Yeah.
Well, just remember now to stay relaxed and keep your eye on that reference on the tow plane. And if you do get into any problems you feel you can't handle, pull or release, come on back to the field. You're always within gliding distance. And don't get carried away with soaring now. We want you back here to the field. And good luck. Have a real good flight.
Thanks a lot.
Now came the moment of testing. How well would he do on his own in the vast air ocean? But now he was alone, relying only on his reflexes, his judgment, and his skills. This was what it meant to fly like a bird. It was a heady experience, one in which exuberance might easily overbalance caution. But he remembered Fred Harris's send-off.
Don't get carried away with soaring now. We want you back here to the field. You're always within gliding distance.
Coming down, he discovered, was almost harder than going up. There were so many things to think of in that concrete runway rushing up to meet you. Perhaps it was the tension. Maybe he tried too hard. Whatever the reason, it wasn't the cleanest landing ever made. But then, as the saying is, any landing's a good landing if you can walk away from it. And at least Chris could do that.
Oh, real good. Real good. Good fun.
Oh, Chris.
Congratulations, Chris.
Real
Nice.
fun.
Good
Thank you,
show.
Chris. It's real good to have you back on the ground again.
Great. Oh, good landing.
Very good, Chris.
Thank you, Bob.
Chris?
Real good.
Now Chris was a sailplaner. And to prove it, he'd had the traditional baptism that follows a first solo. Later that afternoon, while waiting his turn to go up, Chris saw what a sailplane can really do in the hands of an expert. Someday he'd perform aerobatics like that. But first things first. The problem of the moment was the Silver Sea test. Cross country, 32 miles, 5 hours aloft, and altitude gained 3,280 feet. Wildlife observed en route, an unexpected dividend, but no extra points. Nature lover or sailplaner? For a moment, Chris seemed to forget which. And in the air, even an instant of forgetfulness can mean trouble. Now he'd lost his lift. Now it was look out below. Well, to repeat an old saying, any landing is a good one if you can swim away from it. As it turned out, the damage to the plane was rather slight, especially when compared to the damage to Chris's ego and the severe dent in his pride. Fred Harris let the boy stew a bit, just a wee bit for his own good. Then, generously, he turned on the famous Harris grin. After all, he knew as well as anyone that it's a rule of the game: when you've got to come down, you've simply got to come down. Duck pond or no duck pond. Eventually, the record said Silver Sea. It didn't seem necessary to mention the ducks. Next try, in a new high-performance model, the Gold Badge. "187 miles of non-stop flight and a climb of almost 10,000 feet. And to prove the point beyond doubt, a recording instrument called a barograph to register every change in altitude. For every sailplaner, there are days when he can't seem to make the elements play his way. And for Chris, this seemed to be one of them. perfect approach. For the locker room, a real tall one.
Milt, I'd like to have you meet this boy. Chris, this is Milt Thompson, the test pilot at NASA.
Pleased to meet you, sir.
How do you do, Chris? Milt's invited us over to take a tour of the Flight Research Center. Would you like to go?
Oh, man, would I?
Hey, that's really neat.
Thought maybe we could show you another type of gliding that you might be interested in.
The art of sailplaning suddenly took on a whole new meaning for Chris when he and Margaret visited Edwards Air Force Base. For here at NASA, in a realm of space thinking and imaginative ingenuity, men had found ways to put the science of gliding to new and surprising uses. Test pilot Thompson told them a bit of what was going on.
This is one of our X-15 research aircraft. It's rocket powered. We've flown in excess of 4,000 miles an hour and 350,000 feet in altitude. We call it a hypersonic glider. F-104 jet aircraft, Lockheed Starfighter. We use them as proficiency trainers for the X-15 pilots.
To the fascinated visitors, nothing seemed less likely to fly than this odd contraption. Yet rocket motors, it turned out, could actually lift it and keep it aloft. This weird-looking craft is a lunar research vehicle designed to study problems involved in landing on the moon. Someday, said test pilot Thompson, a machine of this type might well deposit commuters safely at the moon's front door. The oddest glider of the lot, if glider it could be called at all, proved to be this stubby little craft, officially the M2, but more affectionately called the Hot Brick and the Upside-Down Flatiron. Things began to take on a more familiar look. As Chris and Margaret could see, this was more like the sailplanes at home. The M2 was towed into the air like any sailplane and then cut loose on its own. Still in an experimental stage, this they learned is how future astronauts may eventually make their return to Earth by gliding down through the atmosphere to almost any predetermined landing point. As Chris had begun to realize, there is more to the art of gliding than first meets the eye. By now, Chris had been bitten by the bug, the secret longing that sooner or later comes to every sailplaner. Now he wanted to try for the highest award in soaring, the Diamond C. It would be a challenge, a tough one, but he felt he was ready. And so did his best rooter, Margaret. And equally as important, so did Fred Harris.
Come over here and try to pick up this sheer north. But I'm afraid the mountains get so high up in here that it's going to be overdeveloped, as the clouds will be right on top of the peaks. And if that's the case, then You should have altitude enough to cross over this valley and pick up this next ridge going north, east of it. And about that time you get up in here, it's going to be dark, and but you'll have your diamond.
This time, the problem was the biggest Chris had ever tackled. Before the flight was over, he must record 16,000 feet of altitude, and it must be a sustained journey of 311 miles, long enough for a pilot to get thirsty and even a bit hungry. It helped to know that Fred Harris had confidence in him. And of course, he knew he had Margaret pulling for him, too.
Ground control, this is 88 Zulu. Releasing at 5,500, are you with me?
Okay, fine and dandy. We'll be right behind you. We have you in sight.
When a sailplaner goes across country, it's helpful to have his ground crew go with him. And now Fred and Margaret set out to do just that. They took the trailer to bring the plane home at the end of the journey. But more than that, they wanted to stay in touch just in case of trouble. Destination for both parties, somewhere near Bishop. Rendezvous in case contact was lost, Bishop Airport.
Zulu, this is ground control. I'd move over against those hills a little bit more. There you might get a little push up there from ridge lift. Might try it anyway.
Chris appreciated Fred's advice and immediately undertook to follow it. It was good to have an experienced observer along. The first hour, everything went smoothly, exactly according to plan.
Ground control, this is 88 Zulu. The lift's pretty good up here. I can keep going, I guess. I'm right on course. 88 Zulu, over.
Though Chris was on course, as he had said, it wasn't long before the ground crew was not. That was the beauty of travel in the sky. No detours. But the earthbound travelers weren't so lucky. Now they'd have to double their speed and try to catch up, if they could on these bumpy back roads. Another hour went by, and for Chris, it was still smooth sailing. But for Fred and Margaret in the ground below, the journey had become a kind of obstacle course. This wouldn't do. Much more of this and they'd never catch up. 88 Zulu, meanwhile, was doing fine. No roadblocks up here. The altimeter said what it was supposed to say, and Chris felt he could even relax a bit. At the end of the fourth hour, Chris met the mountains Fred Harris had predicted. And fortunately, the clouds were not right on top of the peaks, at least not yet. No more relaxing now. From here on, he must tend strictly to business. Careful flying, alert attention, and supreme caution.